and we're back. This is part two. I got cut off. Sorry. But yeah, the 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 film got those very small details correct. Even from the casting, even though it is not necessarily all universally Mexican or Mexican American. Some actors are Panamanian or Panamanian American. But I think, to be honest, that they did a really decent job in doing the best representation of Mexican culture. They even have down like certain things that are staples to Mexican culture. Frida, even the main villainous character, Ernesto, who has a very big role in how people perceive him. He seems he can honestly double as Pedro Infante, who was an incredibly well renowned and beloved Mexican actor who was a triple threat in the sense that had a singing career and had an acting career. And that's played by Benjamin Bratt. Um, and if anything, the constant reminder of how sometimes people will let you know, like, maybe you shouldn't always meet your heroes. It's very much embedded in the story for Coco. Poor Miguel, who's only wanting a blessing from his family, who's passed over, to give him their blessing to, so he can return and be able to pursue this music career, so he could stay and stray away from the shoemaking business, that even though it's a credible job, that's not for him. That's not the life he wants to pursue for himself. So he goes through a number of pitfalls and ends up bumping hold on, into Hector, who has some very funny scenes where he's trying to desperately go and be remembered, and not even down to how these spirits are able to come back to the living world. They have to kind of go through something that looks like TSA, which is very comedic. So that's what makes it, I think, honestly enjoyable for adults too. How many times have to wait on the line, and there's some issue with your paperwork, whatever the case may be. Poor Hector, but because he's gone without anyone remembering him, he's slowly starting to fade. And as it is explained throughout the film, that if your beloved family don't remember you, you just kind of cease to exist. And although he's always had a daughter who would remember him, she couldn't ever place him on the altar because it was just not accepted. And her memories were starting to fade of him because, unfortunately, she had dementia. Um, and Miguel, still in pursuit for his musical career, does a live competition to see if he can, because he has convinced himself somehow, someone inadvertently has made it seem as though this Pedro Infante character, the Ernesto, famous actor here in this movie, is his great grandfather. So he does everything in his power so that he can physically be near him. Hector even hatches a plan so that, oh, I used to work with him. So then, little to his knowledge, and is able to piece together soon after that Ernesto was the villain this entire time and had poisoned him, poor Hector, because he was choosing his family. He liked singing and he liked songwriting. All the talent that Ernesto would eventually claim as his own was coming from Hector's hard work, and he killed him based on that. Like he first, he didn't want to let go of the dream of being a duo, and then he just didn't refuse to having just figuring it out for himself. So he kills Hector, and then that's when Hector realizes, like, oh, you killed me. It wasn't like I passed away from food poisoning or whatever the case may be. And then Miguel realizes that he's his great grandfather. But Coco in the living world is starting to fade, and there are actual moments that breaks your heart, because those moments are really intense, especially with people who have relatives and parents that are slowly starting to fade. It breaks your heart. There are some intense scenes where you don't think so that you would feel that sense of sadness or melancholy, but you do in watching this kid movie. But nonetheless, I think it's still a great asset, and especially if you are trying to explain what transition is to children, and also it embodies what Mexican culture represents when it comes to celebrating their loved ones that have deceased. So I recommend it. You can screen it on Disney Plus. I think it is a great film. It still stands up. There are a number of other films that will be exploring other cultures. Encanto, which I believe is soon to debut either in theaters first and then eventually in streaming, which focuses on Colombian culture. The music is produced by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and so we'll see. I'll be reviewing because Lord knows I'm very proud and sensitive to the content that we see for Colombian culture because I myself am Colombian American. So we'll see. I'll be definitely checking that out with a fine tooth comb. But nonetheless, there's a number of the other films that are coming out that is very much a culture friendly for the Latino community. Another suggestion that is great for family viewing for this particular holiday is Maya and the Three, I believe it's called, and the Three. It's available on Netflix. I can't say wholeheartedly that I have watched it. I'm just going to make mention of it because it seems very kid friendly. And it also explains the Mayan tribe and have made it fun for children to know more about their ancestry and history. I'm sure augmented to make it appealing to children. There are a number of fight sequences. I was able to see a few minutes of the first episode entitled Quinceañera. But nonetheless, they're princesses, and they're not what traditionally how historic history books have detailed uh, native tribes and whatnot. I'm sorry, I keep checking because I'm like I don't want my jewels to pop off. But nonetheless, that's another suggestion that if you want to um, keep your children entertained or have them know more history about themselves and feel empowered, you have options. And I'm excited to see more of that type of programming because it's so long overdue. So let's move on into more serious subject matter. Now this particular film that I'm gonna briefly, and it's a short film. It's an excellent short film. I don't know exactly also why it didn't get as much promotion as it should have gotten, and it was 21 minutes. And honestly, I would have enjoyed watching a full length story based on this particular topic. So it's called For Rosa, Para Rosa on HBO, and it discusses the sterilization of Mexican American women in Los Angeles in the 1970s. At the center of a new short film, so that's the subject matter that's at the center of a short film acquired by HBO, For Rosa, written and directed by Catherine Boyd Batstone, is inspired by the Madrigal 10. The collective was made up of 10 Mexican American women who underwent sterilization without informed consent, and through coercion of the Los Angeles County USC Medical Center in the 1970s. A whistleblower, Dr. Bernard Rosenfeld, who worked at the hospital, reached out to the civil rights organization and attorney, Antonia Hernandez, got involved. She worked with the victims and in the civil rights class action lawsuit, Madrigal versus Kiyagan in 1978, representing the mostly non-English speaking Latinas from East LA, a predominantly Latino neighborhood who lacked access to medical resources. The film tells the story of Eva, a fictional mother, as she learns of her sterilization and joins the 9 other women in the lawsuit against the hospital. In the trailer, Eva and those of in the throes of labor pains, calling for her husband in Spanish, and then asked to sign paperwork. Though the character is fictional, that is what happened to Dolores Madrigal, who claimed the doctor pressured her into signing sterilization consent forms while she was in labor. Rosenfeld's testimony exposed that Dr. Keegan's malpractice. Allegedly, he targeted low-income minority women working under the belief a eugenics rooted in white supremacy where BIPOC and people with disabilities were targeted. This is all information available on hiplatina.com. It also has an incredible cast. It stars Melina Bobadilla. And if the name sounds familiar, I believe she was a journalist for a while for Latina magazine, and she's transitioned into acting. She had a small role in Orange is the New Black the last season, but pivotal. And based on her scene, she plays a woman who's been deported, is in a detention camp, and is about to be deported, having children here. And through that episode, a particular hotline was provided so a number of other people who find themselves in that position can seek counsel, legal counsel, and representation to best help their situation in staying or trying to find some stability in the United States. Soon after that, which is funny because there's a whole controversy based on that, because soon after that, the hotline was pulled, but then it's been now restored. So just tells you how art can be an essential tool in not only storytelling but also in providing information. That's what I'm saying. Look at things with a critical eye sometimes. It's not just for mere entertainment. Some things, yeah, when it's just overtly pushed out, but information like that. And she's an incredible Chicana actress, and I give her all the flowers. And I believe she's also in the last season of Gentefied. One to look out for. I think she has an incredible range, honestly, and the way that her vulnerability and the fact that how afraid she was in the first few scenes that you have, that you can see that she is in massive pain. Labor in itself is scary,